Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Michelle Cox, and I'm excited to bring you something a little different today. We are kicking off a series, which is the first time on the show, and I'm going to bring on guests to talk about the same topic over the coming weeks. And that topic is reinvention. It's something I get asked about a lot, and, all about how I reinvented myself. What steps did I take? What things did I overcome? And whilst I plan on sharing, some of those with you in these conversations, I wanted to talk to a few other people that I know that have, that I've observed, and they've made incredible transitions, and amazing reinvention stories. And I wanted to kind of mine their information and knowledge and stuff on this topic as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you love what I've got in store for you, and that you stick around over the coming weeks because, really interesting guests coming ahead. Also, huge news. I'm excited to announce that, as well as listening to the show, you can now also watch me interrogate the guests that I have on board. I'm just kidding, but I do like to ask a lot of questions. Yes, that's right. The One Question show has now got a YouTube channel, and it's wonderful to be able to finally bring you visual content as well. It's been on my list for a while. Just haven't had the chance and the capacity to do it. So this episode will be the first to feature on the platform, and I'll gradually upload some of the previous episodes as well, as you might like to watch some of those if you haven't caught up yet. And if you're anything like me, when I hear someone's voice, I like to always, kind of see what they look like as well. So hopefully you enjoy that, and tell everyone about that. As always, I really appreciate you being here. I love creating this for you. And if you have anyone in your life that you think might enjoy the conversations as well, please share it widely. I really appreciate that. Do the likes, the votes, all the things, the ratings. It really does mean a lot. So thank you in advance. Now, a bit about today's guest. My dear friend, incredible entrepreneur and fellow creative studio buddy, Valerie Khoo, is here with me. Val is an award-winning feature writer who is also the CEO of the Australian Writers' Centre, an organisation she founded over 18 years ago. It's an amazing organisation if you're looking to learn to write, and in all different facets. Now, as you're about to hear, Val does many things, some of which include being a fellow podcaster. She's an incredible artist. She's an author of 7 books. Her latest books are So You Want to Be a Writer, which she co-authored with Alison Tate, and Power Stories, the 8 stories that you must tell to build an epic business. Val and I always have such incredible conversations whilst we are painting and potting in our studio. And it was fitting that she kicks off this series about reinvention, as she's had just a fascinating trail that's led her to where she is today. There was so much gold in this chat that I've split it into 2 parts for you, as I know you like to keep a short form format. That's very popular amongst my listeners. So let's dive in and hear some of the wisdom that this incredible woman offers us here in part 1 of the show.
Oh, what an absolute treat it is to sit with you today and have you back on the show. Thanks for being here.
Very exciting. Thanks for having me back.
Well, this is for a special series, and the whole premise is around reinvention. And I don't want to say you're the queen of reinvention, but you come close to it for me. So I can't wait for this conversation. You and I have lots of chats about this in our studio, of which we are here today, surrounded by all our things.
Love it.
How fun, huh? So my one question for you as we kick off is, what did you do to reinvent yourself from and to, and why?
Wow. Okay, great question, because I've actually had a couple of different reinventions. So my first reinvention was I went from being an accountant to being a writer. And then some years later, I had another reinvention, because by that time I was a writer for decades. And then I discovered the world of art, and I then reinvented myself as an artist. So I've actually been through it a couple of times. First time was because I knew in my heart that I didn't want to be an accountant, and I had always wanted to be a writer. So that reinvention was just something that I really, really wanted to, was in my heart from when I was a child, and I finally had the guts to go there. The second reinvention was actually that I was very happy being a writer, but I did have a creative itch that I wanted to scratch. And I wanted to explore that. I really wanted to follow my creative curiosity. I wanted to just dabble in things that were intriguing to me. And then I discovered the world of art, and I just went deeper and deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole until I realized I absolutely want to do this as well. So that was the second reinvention.
Amazing. And so I have so many questions about everything you just said there. So why did you become an accountant at the start? Because I think this is something, you and I talk a little bit about, but it's an often discussed thing that people come to me and they're like, well, I was kind of made to do a career because my parents told me I had to do that, or someone said I was good at maths at school, and so then they said I had to become an accountant. And so I think it's quite a common thread that people end up doing a job or a career or, going to university and doing a course that they maybe didn't really want to do. What was your kind of story there?
Yeah, it was really because, so my parents didn't pressure me to choose a particular vocation, but in my childhood, I did not know any artists, did not know any writers, did not know any architects, even just did not know anyone in the creative space. And I basically, my parents, social circle, and therefore my social circle as I was growing up, was that everyone was like a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or an accountant. That was kind of it. And they were kind of like the vocations that you chose from. And so I didn't really want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and therefore I became an accountant. Fortunately, when I was going through school, I enjoyed economics. I really liked learning about that space. So I ended up doing an economics degree at the University of Sydney. And really the choice of doing accounting was, to be quite frank, by process of elimination, in that I didn't want to do government or industrial relations or, political economy. So I kind of chose the next thing that I wanted to do. Didn't want to do the least kind of thing. And I ended up majoring in accounting and becoming an accountant. So it sort of happened that way.
And then the writing side. So you said you always wanted to do writing. Was that like as a kid, because again, this is an interesting point that people sort of say, how do you find your thing? And in terms of reinvention, I think it's an interesting one where do you get to and how does that journey kind of lead you there? Was it that you loved sort of creative writing? Did you always journal as a kid? Well, how did you kind of, find that was something that you were really interested in?
I always loved reading, and I loved going to the library, and I would read everything in the library, from books to magazines to everything, because that's where my dad picked me up after school. So I spent a lot of time in the library. And so you grow up with a love of books and a love of writing, and you think, and you just read it, you go, I'd love to do that one day. How cool would it be to write your own novel? How cool would it be to write for a magazine or whatever it is? And because I knew nobody who did that, I just thought, well, that's just what other people do. I have no idea how to go into that space. Absolutely no clue where to start. That it will never happen to me. And also you then start hearing these stories of, if you want to get a job at a magazine or whatever, it's so competitive. Thousands of people want that job and you're never going to get it. So you just you don't even try. You don't even think that it is a possibility, and therefore you become an accountant.
Yeah. Okay. But I think again, you've touched on something there around that whole belief of you can't be what you can't see. And so I think especially as young girls and, women sort of going through the ranks of their career, was that something that you found, would be more important if you sort of look back now, or kids coming through saying, actually expose yourself to kind of a wider variety? I think like you, my parents, came from working class. So they didn't there were careers and jobs and things that I never even knew existed as a kid just because I wasn't exposed to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is so essential to try and meet as many people as possible and ask questions about their life, ask questions about their career. But even more so, even if you don't come across these people for whatever reason, just because of where you live or anything, it's just understanding that you can find out is that even though I had no idea how to become a writer, or no idea how to get that job in that magazine, no idea how to do any of those things, you just need to ask the right questions and find out. And it's so much easier these days than ever before. We've got Google. Yeah, it's absolutely, it's being curious and knowing that if you don't know how to do something, you can always find out.
So then, okay, so from writing then led you into, now being an artist. I mean, you started, so AWC, so the Australian Writers Centre, like now 18 years ago. So the writing dream became a life, and not even that you became a writer, but you then, run a multi-million-dollar crazy 70-something courses around writing. You haven't done it by halves, let's just say. And then where did the artistic realm come in? So now being this amazing artist that makes these beautiful floral pieces that we're surrounded by here in the studio, where was that sort of itch?
Itch actually initially started because so many people in my life, so many people from all aspects of my life at one point said, you really need a hobby. I didn't really understand what it meant by that because really I was always working. And they just felt that I needed to do something else. I understood that intellectually and I was open to that intellectually, but there wasn't anything that I thought I was interested in that I would have as a hobby. Part of the reason for that was because I was working so much, I didn't allow myself to explore other things, right?
Makes sense.
But then I had to, because so many people said it to me, I thought, okay, well, maybe I should try a bunch of different things. And I just enrolled in tiny little short workshops of different things, a whole range of different things, everything from woodworking to shibori dyeing to color to everything, right? To yarn, crochet, a rug kind of thing, everything. And what happens then is your mind starts opening up to different things. You work out what you don't like or you're not that into, you work out the things that you like a little bit more and you kind of follow that path. And it's very much allowing yourself to go down the rabbit hole, to follow the things that pique your interest, the things that you're curious about. And bit by bit, you end up finding the thing that you're just really, really passionate about and that really lights you up and that makes you want to get out of bed every day kind of thing. So it kind of happened that way. I didn't wake up and go, yeah, I've always been an artist at all, unless compared to I always knew I wanted to be a writer. So I knew that was a path that I already knew I had that goal. With this, it wasn't a goal to be an artist. It was a goal to feed my creative soul, really.
And is that what you'd recommend? So, I mean, I guess it's probably the question I imagine you get asked as well, like all the time. People ask me, how did you find your thing? How did I find pottery and ceramics? And is that what you'd say to people? Just try stuff, be curious, like, just have a bit of a play. Like,
absolutely.
How would you tell someone listening and they're like, yeah, that sounds amazing. I really want to do something else. I want to find a hobby like you.
Yes.
So is there a particular process you went through? Is it like...
Yeah. So I meet a lot of people who do say that and they go, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to enroll in this 3-year degree. And I'm like, no, don't enroll in a 3-year degree unless you know for sure that that's what you want. Because then they commit the next 3 years of their life to something they're not really into. Do the short courses. Absolutely do the short courses because that will help you discover the things that you enjoy and the things that you're not so into. But on that point, Michelle, how did you discover that pottery was your thing?
Company that I worked with, for years. And this was a bit like you as well. I've sort of reinvented myself several times from an athlete when I was younger. Like I did high level and always wanted to sort of go to the Olympics, really. I was kind of hell-bent on that being my life. And then I had major surgery on my knee at 11. That sort of put a bit of a damper on the first one. And then I decided to do netball, which, is even worse for your knees. And then played high level in that regard. And from a job and career wise, I've changed quite a lot, like gone from into different industries and jobs. And I think the real catalyst for me is around it's curiosity. Yes, I'm a very curious person. And it's also tapping into your gut of that intuition and thinking like, this feels good. Something I've been headhunted for jobs. And there were things that I would never have imagined that I could do or even thought I'd want to do. And people were like, oh, you for this job. And I'm like, wow, I don't think I've got the skill to do that. And so people would see things in me that sometimes I didn't see in myself. So that's an interesting thing as well, is to probably when other people recognize your skills more than you. And then I saw an opportunity with a business. I actually actively, after 20 years in tourism, wanted to step out of tourism. And part of that was to see if my skills were transferable. I wanted to try with another industry. And then, so I actually went from tourism into like an, so bought into a business, worked with them for 7 years. And then when we parted ways, I was kind of on board doing that type of stuff. And I was like, well, what do I want to do now? And I sat with that for a bit. And I just started doing all these things that I had on my bucket list. So it was like learning to read music and play music. So I did the piano, which was okay. I wasn't great at it. I really did some languages, and well, I've done a lot of different hobbies. I think I had a lot of craft and art things, but I never thought I was particularly good in a really true creative sense. And I think that was because my mum was very talented. She was an athlete. I wasn't particularly artistic. I want a new dinner set, and I saw this beautiful set at a market, and I thought, wow, that's really expensive per plate. Now I know why they're the values that they have. And I thought, I reckon I could make that myself. And so I enrolled in a course, and from the moment I started, it was a 6-week course. It's like I found my thing.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to get there. And I think that's, again, advice for people to kind of go, you might try several things,
Yeah.
and they are fun, and they may stay a hobby, and and I had no intention ever of it becoming a business or as big as it is now. And I never had any intent to sell anything at the start. I just started posting the joy that I was having around making something that I'd never made before with my bare hands, and going, it just feeds my curiosity in the sense of learning so much. It's like me being able to flourish and express myself creatively for the first time in my life is just like, I can't tell you how much joy it brings.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? And the key word is that you bothered to enroll in that course. You bothered to, give it a go. And I think too, people suffer from just too much analysis and, what should I do? Maybe I should do this. Should I do that? Just do a 2-hour thing.
Yeah.
And see.
Yeah. Literally see if the clay sticks to the wall. I'm curious about your experience then so through this kind of transition and the reinvention. So, I mean, that's an interesting one, because what would you class yourself now? People say, what do you do, Val? How do you define yourself?
That's a very good question, because I think I would say I have a portfolio career, and that I'm a business owner, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, and, I do a billion other things as well, but that's predominantly what I do. I'm on the board of a small bank, quite varied. But I love the mix.
And how long was it before you used the term, I'm an artist?
Started doing it just for fun, and same with you, posting it on Instagram and all the rest of it, just purely because that was what was happening in my life. And then people started saying, oh, can I buy that from you? And I'm like, oh, can sell this kind of thing.
You're like, well, and what price? I had no idea. Like, how do I price this?
No idea.
Where's he start?
So I started kind of thinking, oh, maybe this could be a thing. I just sort of gave it a go. I sold some pieces. And then I think sounds ridiculous, but as a writer, there's very low cost. You need a computer. That's it. You need a computer and the internet, and that's literally it. As an artist, the cost of your art supplies, I spent more money in my first month as an artist than in 10 years as a writer.
I can completely, if someone told me I needed a wheel, I'm like, I'll get this one. No. You need to get this one that's $3,000. I was like, what? It's a hobby.
Yeah.
And a kiln and all the things. So equipment.
It really adds up. And I thought, okay, I want to tax deduct this, but I can't tax deduct it unless I have an income.
The accountant coming in.
Exactly. So suddenly I had to a certain income level before I could tax deduct it. So it kind of started that way. It's kind of ridiculous. I'm a bit obsessed with tax. I know that that's very strange. So it kind of started that way, that I realized if the only way is to tax deduct this is to gain an income, I better start gaining an income. So then at some point I thought I need to set some income goals. And that's when I started calling myself an artist, because it kind of just made sense, right?
Interesting point you're saying about the, making it then tax deduction. Then I've got to, I use always the term, it's wash its face. When when I sort of got to that stage where I'm like, okay, this is no longer a hobby, and it's sort of then tilted into a business, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to make sure I've outlaid all this money. I want to make sure I cover all those costs. Like, did that change the view for you? And I guess now, a few years down the track, does it make the joy of painting any different for you, do you think, from the days of pure, I'm doing it for myself and it's a hobby, to then, being now an income and a fully fledged business?
Yes. So actually, I didn't think it would, but it did. So for the first couple of years, I had very specific income goals, and I just worked my guts out to achieve them. And that was great. I achieved my income goals. Hooray. And I made sure in my second year, I increased my income goal and all that kind of stuff. And then during my third year, I was continuing on that path. And I realized I wasn't very satisfied, or I wasn't particularly happy. I wasn't making decisions based on that instead of my creative curiosity. So I really took stock. I stopped having that particular income goal, and I decided only to explore my creative curiosity for that particular year. I was a lot happier, and I was discovering new things, and I was discovering new styles. I was discovering new methods. It was really interesting and exciting. What's interesting is then I continued to do that for that year and exploring new things. And now it's kind of at the stage where, I think now I've figured out a space that I am comfortable in for a little while, where I can have my income goals again, and still be doing all of the things that I actually love.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it? And that's probably where I'm at the moment, as you and I have chats about. It's that sort of making almost to that stage in production pottery, and it's not really what I wanted to do. And also, like you, because this is not the only thing I do, then it meant that when I was here, in the times that I could make, I was making stuff that I didn't absolutely want to make. And I thought, well, okay, this is part of, then it's becoming almost like a real job. But is that what I want to do with this? And so it's a good question to sort of, this sort of junction to get to and reevaluate that. So I think that's sort of something for people to consider.
So what have you reevaluated yourself to? What is it that you want to do with the pottery?
Yeah, I'm kind of working through that a little, but I got a couple of mentors that work in the production space, and I just see how hard they work, and they, obviously a lot of pieces for restaurants and things. And I know that's not what I want to do. So at least it's good, I'm kind of eliminating stuff. I really enjoy the bigger kind of statement pieces, and, they're really unique. They're one-off. Every single piece I make like that is different. They're a little bit more of a higher value piece. So then, it's me a lot more joy than the 10 cups. I don't really love making cups. No, I'm usually whinging in the studio. So I have limited time because of the other things, and also travel. To me, such a vital part of my life, and makes me so happy that I've got to factor in that as well. So then I've got to be realistic about how much time I can actually spend in the studio. So they've kind of been really good things for me to look at. But it really kind of goes into a question, I guess, for you, because we are similar and we do have these portfolio careers. If anyone's kind of listening and they want to go like from a complete reinvention and go from one career to another,
yeah,
like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of that sort of transition, and how, like, sometimes you go, okay, I want to start a business and go hell for leather.
Yeah.
Or, do you think people should, put their toe in a bit, like you said before, about the short courses, and then see if the business is viable and then take a bigger stand?
Yeah. Two things. One, absolutely the biggest mistake I think people make is unless they've got the luxury of time, right? Like, let's say they're retired and they don't have a financial imperative to pay the mortgage or whatever, do what you want, learn what you want, study what you want. But realistically, if you want to make a change from one career completely different to another completely different career, like I did from accounting to writing, very, very different. Two things. I don't think don't straight into a 3-year degree. As I said before, start with some short courses and workshops. But two, people think that there's some kind of cold turkey cutoff point. You don't have to wait and resign from your job, or have that date where you then suddenly you become a writer or whatever it is your next career is. I am a big fan of the stepped approach. So I really think, and this is the advice I give to people, and a lot of people have taken this advice to great success, is that let's say you're in, like a guy I know who was in IT. So he's in IT. He wants to be a writer. So he just cuts down to 4 days a week. And he has his 5th day and, potentially hit the weekend if he wants to do his writing. But he has an income. He can pay his mortgage. He might need to tighten things a little bit. Cuts down to 3 days a week. Then you cut down, you know what I mean? And then you can maybe become a contractor to somebody. So the stepped approach, I think, is a very low risk way to explore a career. I do know one other person who went to 4 days to explore the new career, actually decided the new career wasn't for him, and then went back to 5 days. That's fine. But I also know people who have just gone 5, 4, 3, and then, kind of freelance or work a day and a half in their original career and do other career in the rest of the time.
Yeah, it's great advice. And I think that, people kind of do tangled up. They're like, I hate my job and I want to do this. And so if you found the thing that you think you're interested in, and there's an element as well, often as we both started, as a hobby.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said, like to just have a playful approach and just try some things on the side, on the weekends, after work, whatever, and then just see where it lands for you. And then you kind of think, could I actually imagine doing this, full time or at least part time? I mean, I think people say we're lucky in terms of what we do, but you and I have made our own luck and we've created the world and, environments that we work in. People have to be brave, I guess, in a way to look at things a bit differently.
Yes.
But also there's a risk absolutely with that. We are both the main kind of breadwinners, I guess, in our families and our situations. So there's an element of that the pressure is on you to perform and for the businesses to do well. So it's a consideration as well. But there's lots of other questions I've got. So what I want to do, though, is put a pin in this now, because this is a great start. We're getting into the depths of this, and I'm going to make everyone wait till next week to the to the next part of this, Val. So there's lots of other questions I have around getting into the nuance of it. But if you've enjoyed that so far, everyone, you can come back next week, because Val's going to talk a lot more about some of the more detailed things and some of the concerns. And I want to get into like how you navigated the financial part as well. So stick with us.